Welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting of April 20th, 2023. So this is the fifth meeting of the 2023 budget cycle. First of all, I'm going to ask if there's a declaration of pecuniary interest.
I just realized it this afternoon, but I see there's one line item in there for the Strathroy Hospital Foundation. So if that gets mentioned or whatever, I am a member of that board and would declare an interest and remove myself from any conversation whatsoever.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? Councilor Wilson?
My stepdaughter has received an offer of employment from the summer camp counselor, so I'll move myself from anything involving summer camp counselors.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no others, we have received regrets from Councillor Hipple, who won't be with us tonight. Before we get started, I want to mention Monday night's meeting I was on by Zoom, and I just wanted to warn everyone that whether you have your microphone on or off, you seem to still hear everything. So, so just keep that in mind for any conversations that you're having that you don't wish to be broadcast to the world. So, yeah, just. You can do it if you want, just be aware of it. I just want you to be aware of it. So with that, tonight we turn to the, back to the operating budget for 2023, and there were a number of things that we needed to look at. As you recall from the meeting on the operating budget, there were a number of new positions we proposed, and we sent back to staff asking for reports on those positions and everything related to that. So before we have Doug speak on that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to kick us off tonight.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as Chair has duly pointed out, that we are looking at the operating budget, and there's a couple things, changes since even this has gone out. Number one, to alert you to, is Chief Smith from the fire sent in a note saying he would like to table for now the hire of fire staff based on making sure that council has the proper data to make that choice moving forward. So that will be pulled out by his request. If council still wants to leave that in, I guess we'll leave it up to council to discuss that, but he's not looking to move that forward at this stage, but make it part of the multi-year 24 and forward budget. The other item is that the cemetery increase and the parks increase should be reduced because both of those positions were already recorded before the report that you got from Doug, from our Director of Human Resources. Those were already, Director Littleborn had already included those in his operating budget, so those numbers shouldn't have changed, but I added them in error, so they will be reduced. So just for reference sake, the cemetery will actually show a increase of $12,384, or an 8% increase, not the 682 or 43 for the cemetery. The parks actually should show a decrease of $29,309, or a 5% decrease on that budget. So those things being said, the other thing obviously, so really the increases that were recorded on the report that you received for tonight's meeting should only have included two real increases. That is the council increase, and that's for that $15,000 to the donations that was passed at the budget, at the council meeting for the community partnership fund. and that is to fund the extra increase in the donation line item for those programs, including the $10,000 that was for the high school project that was at the arena. And then lastly, the only other increase would be adding in the Director of Communication, Director of Legal, Legislative, and Clerk position back into the budget. So those two are the only two that really have a bearing on tonight.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next I think we're going to turn to Doug to go through his report he put together on the proposed hirings for 2023.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, I think it's evening, or good afternoon, Council. So the report before you, I'm going to take it back to February 2023, February 14th. Council Committee had asked for some additional information. So this report contains that with respect to an updated org chart. I trust you've all received that. The org chart, as well as a breakdown of our last 3 years of hiring, what we've hired in the last 3 years. And the report circles back to our request or ask for 2023 for manpower. Before I get into some other detail of the report, I felt it'd be prudent that I add in some census data. I worked with Director Huff. She provided some census data with respect to the growth in the community, where it's been and where we're heading through the census data. Pretty impressive rates with respect to, I don't think there's any surprise with what's gone on in our community over the last 3-4 years. So we expect it to continue. So on that premise, I suppose I asked committee, do you want me to go through each position, or have you had a chance to? I kind of laid the report out, the ask or the request, and the implications if not filled for each of the positions in front of you. But I'm more than willing to go what area you'd like me to go to, and I can give you more detail.
Mayor?
Chair, thanks for the report, Director Payne. It's exactly what I was looking for. I think it would be wise to go through on that sheet, just explain each position and what the rationale is. Sure, if that's a question you were looking to have answered, but.
Yeah, I can do that, and I'll look to my fellow directors if I chime in, if I miss something. I won't read it verbatim each section, but I'll kind of summarize. So on the report, the first request is Legal and Legislative Services, so Director of Legal and Legislative Services / clerk. So that's a position with the departure of our recent CAO. I understand council's pointed me or hinted that we want to go back to the pre-2018 structure with adding a director for that department. So this category essentially falls back to 2018, 2019, having that position within our org structure again. Implications there, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. Again, without this position, we'd have no clerk. We have our deputy clerks currently acting as clerks, and we need a leader for the Legal and Legislative Services Department to oversee that department from a leadership side. Would you just want me to continue, or do you want me to stop and ask questions for each, or how would you like to see that, Chair?
May as well take questions on each Councillor Wilson.
With this position being it was one that was done by the CAO previously, and we have the clerks who have been doing most of the work for quite a while, would we not be better to use one of our internal people rather than bringing in somebody else to have them be the director, being they're acting now? They've been doing it without this position for years. Just your comments on that.
I'll just intervene here for a second. I mean, there's always been a clerk. Fred Tranquilli was the clerk, so I believe it's the only required position in the Municipal Act is that you have to have a clerk, so someone has to be, and a treasurer. So it is required. It is a required position. That's right. I'm spare. So
That wasn't what I said. I asked if one of the deputy clerks could become that. We don't need to hire a new person, but promote from internally to do that. So the department has been working with the number of people we have. I guess I still haven't heard why one of our current people who has been acting in this role can't do that, and then we can, instead of hiring a whole nother person with this role, we just go one up, and that would be easier on the budget.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So back to the position. So we need a clerk, we know that. It would be an added position to be a clerk. I think the other half of that equation is the clerk typically in our structure is overseeing the department. They're the leader of that of the legal and legislative services team. That's not to say that our existing deputy clerks, we post, and they can certainly apply for that as well.
So just to clarify then, so we would, in the new structure, we will have a CEO, and we would also have a director of legal and legislative services / clerk. Is that correct?
Yes, that was our previous structure back in 2019. That's exactly when Angela Toth was here. She was our director / clerk of the legal and legislative services team.
Just to follow up, I guess just to follow up on what Greg was saying, though, I think if I understand what Greg is saying, is like we've been functioning, staff have shared these responsibilities now and are doing a good job, so could we not just carve out a position out of the existing staff, promote someone to be a deputy, to be the clerk, and then share the remaining responsibilities with the remainder of the staff rather than adding a whole new person?
To the chair, to Councillor Palmer. I think the missing piece is the leadership oversight of the department. If you don't have that leadership oversight, it would have to fall under another director. You're going to need leadership there to direct the department and guide the department, unless you apply to the clerk.
Would that not be the CEO's job to oversee that department? No,
It never has, but
it was just one person. So he oversaw himself, I guess.
Previously, back in history, prior to the previous CAO, he was the director / clerk of that department. So he held the title of both, and the same as our previous director had the title of both as well. Director of the department / clerk.
Thank you. So I guess the point that I'd like to make is, so first of all, the breadth of scope of responsibilities of the clerk's department is immense. You know, you're talking wedding licenses, death certificates, lottery licenses. God, I probably can't even list them all, but it's wide. It is really wide. Also, what falls under their responsibilities is managing and carrying out the election. So while with the current people in the clerk's department were managing the day-to-day functions, you get one hiccup and you're sunk. Like, you just can't do that extra stuff. And so then who's also looking after, what kind of education and training that may be coming into place? I don't know. I think they're fulfilling the role of the day-to-day function as it currently exists, but there was still somebody doing all that other stuff above them. So, yes, that was our former CAO doing that, but somebody still has to do it. And if we're segregating the positions, and I think, there's good reasons to separate them. Somebody's got to do all that extra planning work that goes above and beyond the day-to-day operations of the clerk's department.
Seeing no other comments, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I'll continue, and perhaps we can summarize at the end, I guess, the committee's direction. So I'll move over to HR, so that obviously falls under my responsibility. So the request is for a human resources generalist. We currently have a staff of 2, myself and our generalist. Looking to add a third. Essentially, we're working in a reactive world in HR with respect to some of our wellness, our health and safety. I want to get to a proactive. We just don't have the horsepower to advance some of the updates that we need to do with respect to health and safety, the policies, and not just health and safety, but all policies essentially. I'm building the program from the ground up essentially. It's just hit 5 years since I've been here, and time's flying by. So I'm not there yet. And when I reflect upon why I'm not there, I was a bit cocky at the start, thinking I could get us up to shape in 3 or 4 years. I think it's just very complex with respect to building that platform. A big driver is the police services for me. A lot of our time is directed to the police services and support. I have no problem with that, but prior to me coming on, police services looked after, the health and safety and different things themselves. With this being here, we're absorbing that, and that's taking a lot of our time. Excuse me. I would expect probably 50% of my time is dedicated directly to police services. So the ask is that if I could get an additional position, it would allow me to come out of the trenches, if you will, and be more proactive and set structure in place to allow us to be better in the program. So I'll leave it at that. If there's any questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Director Payne, just a question about the rate. I know that includes benefits also.
Yes.
Could you just, what percentage of that is benefits?
Majority is, so I'll go back and give us some. So the numbers you're saying are the worst case scenarios. I mean, when I mean worst case, that's assuming everybody's at full job rate, and your benefit piece is you're looking 30, depending on salary, but it's about 38% additional for benefits. So that adds quite a big piece there as well on top of the salary.
Okay, so you answered my question. It is the top of the grid.
Yeah, it's
right?
the top of the, yes. So that wouldn't be for years out. Obviously, we have a 6-step grid. Typically, we start at the lower end of it. But that is assuming that would be a job rate, and their full family coverage, full benefits, everything. So those costs would be reduced if somebody was single, as example. They wouldn't have family benefits and things like that. So.
Bob, so if that's the worst case, Director Payne, what's the best case scenario? What's the lower end of that? Just guess.
I don't like guessing, but so I'll just talk salary right here, and then we'll just add, say, 38%. So for the salary band, when we scored that position, it caps out our job rate at $92,000. Okay. So best case, if you will, is $73,000. So that's step one.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe in situations like that, we should use the most likely rather than worst and best case, because that makes it sound,
Yeah, and the reason I did that, I wanted to be fully transparent to show council, here's your maximum amount of costs that could happen, so, but point taken, thank you.
Councilor Derbyshire.
Thank you. I just have one question for the total wages and benefits. Does that include police and fire, or?
To the chair, to Councilor Derbyshire. So not police, that is all staff. So I'm talking tonight full-time. The total wages and benefits, all our seasonal, all our volunteer firefighters, everybody but police. So it's our 40 or 50 seasonal positions we have over the summer months, that's including them as well. I wanted to paint a picture to show you what the total package is for wages and benefits for all our staff.
No, that's good, but the police we pay it, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, we do. So the budget in front of you is minus police, because police have their own budget, so.
But it's all part of this budget, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it would be part of our wage if we were going total wages, right? That would move up about another about 15 million then? Is that? Call it 16. About 16 million total wages. Okay.
Seeing no other questions there, can you carry on?
Thank you, Chair. I think what I'll do is I'll put my peers on the spot if they're able. I think they're probably in a better position to speak technically for the rationale, but I'll turn it over. So building and planning, Director Hoff's looking for a planning assistant. Jennifer, are you okay going through that, or? Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair. So this position is really a result of the last year and a half with the province, downloading a number of responsibilities and adding additional responsibilities to the municipalities to adhere to timelines, changing our DC Act, as well as significantly changing our policy and regulatory regime. So even, for instance, the latest iteration of the provincial policy statement that's in draft form now, we anticipate that's going to come and be approved, which will trigger further amendments to our own official plan. And so this work really requires some extra horsepower in our office to keep up to date. So in very concrete terms, I can give you some examples. For instance, right now we have a co-op student who has really helped us keep up to date with things. The new changes have required us to begin a pre-consultation process. So before any applications are submitted, we have to make sure that they're in a complete form. And so what we have done is held pre-consultation meetings almost with every applicant before they submit an application form. This requires the planners to meet with the applicants and to produce meeting notes for the applicant to document the submission requirements. And then a further review of a draft application before it's submitted. And so all of that, the current planners that we get from the County of Middlesex just don't have the time for the additional work on all of these planning applications. And so our current co-op student has been very helpful to do those notes for us and to allow us to meet with the applicants when they want to meet. So we're able to schedule within a week or two, usually, these meetings. And knowing that this is a co-op term, we don't know if it's going to continue on. We think that there is a role now to have a full-time position to ensure that these tasks will get done and that we have somebody competent who has a background in planning that can assist our department, maintain our timelines, ensure that we don't have to issue refunds for applications, and as well to increase our performance measures as per the requirements of the province. So the idea, just to summarize, is to get a full-time planning assistant that would support the work that we do here to make sure that we're responsive to the development needs of our community. And we would review the need for a co-op position in 2024. So I'll leave it at that, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions here? Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I will most definitely support this position, because I've told Director Huff I see planning as revenue generation, so I may ask a bit of a loaded question, because I know how I would answer it. Is that enough to make sure we get everything done in time so we can generate revenue? Because right now we're at a bit of a downturn in the market, and we expect that anytime sooner, we hope that it'll pick up and we'll see more shovels in the ground. So, Director, I want to make sure you have enough people in your department to help us generate revenue.
Thank you, through the chair. That's actually a difficult question for me to answer because I don't know what the province is going to do next, to be quite honest. And this is reacting to some of the changes they've made. What I'm worried about is some of the changes they've made is really going to increase our application load. I think there could be a significant number of applications. So I don't think I am comfortable saying 100% this is going to get us through, to be honest. But I think it's going to be a wait and see. Where does the province land? This will get us through this year, and if we need more, then obviously we'll come back. Thank you.
Councilor Wilson?
As you said, these changes are all new. Do you think that as you get used to them, you'll be able to get some efficiencies and maybe you won't need any more beyond this? Like I know whenever I do a new process, it normally takes me 2 to 3 times as long as it does after I've been doing it for 3 or 6 months. Do you see those kind of efficiencies coming into your department?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Wilsey. So I don't think the extra time is from I mean, it takes time to implement new process, but what takes time is is actually doing the process. We're not going to be, we're going to be carrying on with the processes that we've implemented now, and those processes just simply take more time. There will always be bumps along the way that we need to change in accordance to the province, and I think those are kind of looked at on our level as short-term pain. Get the process in place. Once we get the process, then we're able to carry on. So I wouldn't say it's coming up with a new process that's difficult, it's actually undertaking those new processes.
Just commenting here, the Good Roads Conference this week, almost every person we spoke to from every municipality was saying the demand on planning staff and the shortage of planning staff out there is a real issue for almost every municipality at this point. So. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll turn this over to Director Lilborn, Community Services.
Thank you, Director Payne. The Community Services Division is looking for a cemetery assistant. Now this has a little bit of background or history to it. Prior to 2018, 2019, we used to have 2 full-time cemetery personnel in the cemetery, as well as a 32-week seasonal person in the cemetery. When we hired the horticultural staff and combined them with property maintenance and the cemetery, our hope was that we'd be able to utilize that additional staff to assist with the cemetery operation. So we eliminated the permanent full-time positions. We went down from 2 permanent full-time down to 1 full-time with a 32-week seasonal. It hasn't been successful. The challenges that we have is the workload has increased with regards to horticulture with the removal of the herbicides and pesticides. So we have an immense amount of weed pulling and maintenance in our garden beds, along with trimming of curb lines and so on. And we don't have the time from a horticultural perspective to pull a person off that and have them go work in the cemetery. So the idea was to bring that second person, full-time person back. We were going to, in the budget that was presented to you, we trimmed back the 32-week seasonal person to 16 weeks. So it'd be a true summer position. The challenges that we're facing within the cemetery is under the Cemeteries Act, we have an obligation to maintain the headstones and markers and upright monuments for in perpetuity. We have not been doing that. Any marker, any upright marker that has a greater than a 5-degree lean needs to be reset to 0. Any marker, or not marker, but any upright monument that could be moved with just over 30 pounds or 30 pounds of pressure needs to be reset and re-glued. And all of this is very time consuming, and it's not something that we can do quickly. We have over 5,500 upright monuments, and who knows how many ground markers that are being covered up by the edges of grass. And eventually, if we don't maintain them, we'll lose those markers because they'll get covered by the soil and the sod. So as a responsibility to maintaining these markers and upright monuments, we just don't have the staff to do it. So this position that I've asked for, along with the reduction of the seasonal person, will get us onto a program where we're able to start maintaining these monuments. What we need to do is to go to every monument, measure the lean, and then do a push test on it. If it moves under 30 pounds pressure, it needs to be dealt with immediately. Same thing with a 5-degree lean. If it doesn't move and does not have a lean, then we need to go through a flow chart that we have that identifies whether it's a level 1 or a level 2. Level 1 needs to be fixed immediately. Level 2 says it needs to be re-inspected in 12 months. So you can imagine going around with a scale and a gauge to measure the angle to 5,500 monuments. and then you hit one that needs to be dealt with right away, well, now you're stopping, and you're fixing the one that needs to be dealt with. So this will go on for years before we get through all 5,500 monuments. By the time we get done the 55th 100, we'll be going back to number 1 again, right? So this will be an ongoing, perpetual requirement of the department. We've ignored this for so long that I was gonna try to take Councillor Derbyshire in the cemetery today, but he was out being a cowboy chasing a horse. But there are monuments that I can walk up with and push over with a finger. And that's just not safe for staff, and it's not safe for our residents who visit the cemetery. And the cemetery is busier and busier and busier. They say it is the last park you'll ever visit.
I think that was humor, right? So.
It was.
Councillor Cameron.
Just a question about cemeteries, because I'm not that familiar with them, but I assume that when you go to get a plot, there's a fee attached. And with those, is the idea not that there'll be some income generated with those fees to offset the cost of maintaining the cemetery in the future? And if so, have we increased the fees in consideration of this maintenance that needs to be done?
Absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Palmer, the Cemetery Act allows us to collect fees for what they refer to as care and maintenance. We can only utilize the interest off that care and maintenance fund. And we don't generate a huge amount of interest. And it's actually prescribed within the Cemeteries Act what those funds can be used for. Whether it's monument maintenance or maybe purchasing new equipment with regards to the cemetery and so on. And Brianna is the one who coordinates all of that for us through the clerk's department.
Just to follow up, so you're saying then that the fees and the interest that we're collecting don't cover the costs?
They will not cover the cost of staff, no. That's associated with it. It's very labor intensive. It's not a lot of material work that needs to be done. When we remove a monument to redo the foundation, we're not bringing in forms and pouring concrete. We're using a specialized grid and stone dust and chip, which will work just as well as a cement concrete foundation. It's the labor that we need to do the work. The cost of the materials to do the work is very minimal.
Is it fair to say, Rob, that even without the monument, like the cost of maintaining the monuments that you face now, that you don't generate enough income to look after the cemetery by a long shot, I would think, right?
No, the cemetery, if you bear with me for a moment, today we have 47% cost recovery on the cemetery. So we bring in 47% of revenue to cover the expenses. So we have a 53% of it is taxation that we need to run the cemetery. So no, we do not generate enough revenue to cover the operating costs.
But under the act, are you allowed to increase the charges to create more revenue?
We, through the chair to Councillor, absolutely. We do a sector scan every couple of years to see what other municipalities and what other cemeteries are charging, because it is a business. We don't want to charge and then have people feel like we're taking advantage of them. But we have steadily increased our fees over the last number of years. I can get you that information if you like in the future.
But that's only on new plot sales, like once you've bought, you can't be retaxed. Councillor Pelkman.
So I can see the point of the extra person for 8 months of the year when you've got maintenance and stuff. Is there anything in our collective agreement or any use for them somewhere else if there's months where some of that stuff can't be done?
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, we could have been fixing monuments 12 months out of the year this year with the weather we had. If we have a bad winter, we have snow removal that needs to get done throughout the municipality, including the cemetery. We have winter burials that go on year round. We have staff that need to take vacation Typically, the cemetery staff have been really good so far, and they try to avoid taking their vacation in the peak of the summertime, and they typically do it on the shoulder seasons. I don't know if that will continue or not, but that's what we've seen in the past. So the position will be utilized fully for the 12 months. It may not be specifically in the cemetery. It could be out helping us do snow removal, whether we're doing snow removal at Parkview Manor or Caradoc Community Center or other non-unionized facilities.
I don't want to go down this path, but I will anyway for a second. But just experience with European cemeteries, because I have relatives that are buried there, that you have the grave for a period of time, and basically we have to re-up after, I think it's 10 or 20 years. The family has to basically to maintain the grave, otherwise the grave is removed, so I'm not sure if we ever get to that point, but the expense of running these cemeteries, it becomes a large dollar amount. Councillor Wilson.
Through the chair to Director Lilborn, the 53% that you mentioned for the cost recovery that we're getting from the cemetery, are you including the cost of this assistant when you did your calculation 53%, or is that going to be in addition, so that we're going to be down to some lower percentage?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, that includes this position, the full-time position, as well as the 16-week seasonal. So the budget that I provided Director Dakin had all of those numbers in it. So that number that I referenced today includes all of that information. So it's not going to decrease that cost recovery.
Mayor?
Thanks, Chair. And the overall question, I think, would pertain to both Director Lilborn and Director Strauss. And Councillor Pelkman touched on it with a collective agreement. I looked at the overtime on a few of the ledgers. I know, especially on cemeteries, I look at that one. The overtime is low. I guess we have the work-life balance, but I do know that sometimes you can use overtime to mitigate hiring somebody full-time. I don't know if you want to comment generally on overtime, but specifically when I look at cemetery, that's a pretty low number of overtime. So can we, in the collective agreement, schedule more overtime?
Through the chair to the mayor, the overtime is low in the cemetery. They're not unionized, so staff are able to shift their schedule. So sometimes they would rather not take the overtime because it actually taxes them more. So we're able to adjust their schedules to accommodate that. That's one of the reasons why you see low overtime in the cemetery. Another reason is we don't allow burials on Sundays or stat holidays. And we do burials during the daytime when typically the staff are at work. So there's not really a significant amount of overtime. We need two people there at the same time to do this work. This isn't well, we'll just have the cemetery person work 12 hours a day to get these monuments fixed up. These are two-person jobs. And while we're fixing the monuments, we still have 8 other cemeteries. We're still cutting grass, line trimming, and so on, right? So there's other work that needs to continue while we're doing these audits and repairs of monuments.
Other comments on this one? Councillor Derbyshire?
I just have one more. No, I'm just gonna throw something out there just to kind of throw it off. Probably had we talked, we would have discussed this today, but I was busy. What about subcontract? You know, I know, I don't know if anybody even does that kind of work to reset monument, like on that deal, and same with the grass cutting, whether, you know, we just put those out for tender and maybe.
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, we can look at contracting of the grass cutting, that's for sure. Concern that I have is damage that gets done to monuments. Is it reported to us if the contractor hits a monument? Do we know a contractor hits a monument? With our own staff, we have accountability. I don't think you'd see a significant savings with regards to hiring a contractor due to the amount of, it's very labor intensive. The cutting of the grass is one thing, it's pulling up the line trimmer and then line trimming all 5,500 upright monuments. The contracting out of the service with regards to the repairing the upright monuments and such, again, I don't think you'll see a savings there because then they're only coming in to do that monument work, where we're going, and they're going to charge you a good penny. We already have all the equipment. We already have all of the supplies to do the repairs. We just need the person to do the repairs, which is, you know, $50,000 or $60,000 a year versus what a contractor could end up charging us if they got to bring equipment in and so on. And then, does this contractor have the experience of working in a cemetery and understanding the complexities around dealing with families who are grieving? I'm amazed at how our cemeterians deal with grieving families, and we do receive a lot of compliments with regards to how our staff act professionally in and around funerals and burials, and we've had experiences where family members have, or I shouldn't say not here, but I've had experiences before where family members have shown up at the time the cemetery opens up, lays a blanket down on top of the family member, and doesn't leave till dark. So how do you cut the grass? Right? So the staff members come back in after hours and then cut the grass. Right? So, you know, those are not everyday occurrences, but they do occur. So it is a bit of a special temperament you need to work in the cemetery. And I suppose you get that from being involved in it and around it and dealing with the family members in grieving moments.
Councillor Peltman, you have a question?
Well, it was the point that I was going to make about using contractors, is that, you know, you're dealing with people who are in a very fragile point of life, and you know, you just hate to have those calls come that, geez, we had our funeral and, you know, they were cutting grass nearby and wouldn't stop, or yeah, you know, there's a lot of potential insensitive things that could happen, and it's not. This is one of those areas where I think it's not always about the money. It's about providing the service properly and with respect. And I don't think a contractor is the way to go for some of that services, although it probably would save us money. I think in the end that bit of money is probably not worth it, in my opinion.
Seeing no other comments, then we'll move on to, I believe we're at engineering and public works.
Thank you. Through the chair to the council. So we're looking for 2 additional public works operators. And I'll just say we kind of have 3 seasons in public works. We have winter, then we have flooding, then we have construction. And we kind of have to wrap up construction. So I'll start with winter. In winter we have 9 road plow routes, we have 3 sidewalk plow routes, and we have 1 parking lot plow route. We also have 2 staff that have to do the afternoon shift, so they're not eligible to do that. So we have a total of 14 routes during the day, and at night then we have 2 additional ones, and we have 11 full-time plow operators, and then we have 3 flex operators, I'll call them, that do the sidewalk plowing. So we're currently short of staff just in winter alone. And you may ask, why do I need extra staff? We also don't do proper patrolling. We really do lack on patrolling. Most of our operators show up to work and they're in the plow. They want to clear the road before they actually assess the road, because you can't really do hand in hand. You actually have to document, and I will just say, from a liability standpoint, we could be at a huge risk if we don't have proper documentation. So then what you're probably going to ask, what are they going to do in the flooding in summer months? Because we have these would be 2 additional full-time staff. A big one that has been coming down the pipeline is actually locates for stormwater. So our public works group looks after stormwater locates, or needs to be looking after stormwater locates. And I just looked up our locate requests, and we were at 1,200 for this last period in 2022. So they'll certainly be out busy. There is a potential, we have been very lucky of late, but there's a potential, so anytime anyone requests locates, digs construction, whatnot, we don't actually locate any of our existing storm sewers. So we're taking a huge risk and we are on the hook to repair those. And I will say that as of late, there has been some issues with that. So contractor calls in, says, I didn't know this was here. Well, we can't do anything about it. Other things that we really need to be, I'll say, more proactive on and less reactive. We have lots of tree maintenance. With our staff numbers, we don't really have the levels to maintain our trees. We contract out a lot. You can see that in our operating budget through the tree maintenance, but also we don't do any pruning. We strictly are just reactive. Any municipal tree, we should be maintaining those. However, we just let it go to a complaint basis right now and then we react to it. Another thing that has been slowly creeping up is roadside ditching, especially along gravel right-of-ways. As you do plow, some gravel does make into the ditch. Our ditches do fill in. There's culverts that do get plugged, and again, we are just reactionary where we see the water lie. We don't actually just actively try and clean that up on the go because we don't have the staff. Another one that is could be a very large issue is our stormwater, our maintenance on all of our storm systems. Stormwater management facility cleaning, we haven't done that in many years. We don't do any stormwater catch basin cleaning. We do hire out a contractor at some points, but our staff need to be there. They need to track, they know where the stormwater catch basins are. Other things that we can look at in the summer is just smaller scale construction, so small culverts across the road. We can do that excavation work. Any catch basin work that needs repaired, we do have a lot of old infrastructure in Strathroy-Caradoc. And I'm sure we all know that we are kind of on an island and the groundwater table is very high, so it could become even more of a concern. Other than that, I'll open up for questions.
Any questions? Councillor, I should turn my microphone. Councillor Derbyshire.
I guess mine's more gonna be a comment. You know, we're not supposed to be down in operations, so it's very hard to then say, go against what's being proposed because we're not supposed to be in operations, right? So I don't wanna call out and say some of the things I see because then I'm way down too low. So this is hard for me to make a decision. From my standpoint, I'm not speaking for anybody else. I find it very hard when I would probably be doing things differently all the way around. So it's hard to say two more people's going to fix what we're doing, right? I mean, when I look at even pruning trees and this, that, and the other thing, are we qualified, or do we have to take chainsaw courses and have safety and this, that, and the other thing? So it's actually easier to just phone up Summit Tree Service or whoever, sorry, shouldn't pick a name, but phone up a contractor and say, please come do this, you know, because otherwise we have to train everybody and make sure everyone's safety. And then, you know, we spend half the day going over the safety check. We get 3 trees pruned and, you know, we're just lagging behind. Now that, again, I'm probably into the operations of it, but this is where it gets difficult for me as a counselor not to voice my opinion that way.
I'll let Director Strauss.
I can certainly comment on the training aspect of it. We do actually train all of our operations in chainsaw maintenance and trimming. We train them in road, and for those that are interested in grading gravel roads, and we do offer everybody tractor backhoe, so they do have the excavation experience as well.
Mayor,
Yeah, I'm not sure if my comment would be appropriate, but I would just say to Councillor Derbyshire, if there's any other time you want to be down in operations, might be now, because I have questions too regarding the operation and the budget, because I can see things that I may do differently, things like subcontracting more than I had thought about the trees and snow plowing. So again, I'm at a loss too as to how to move forward to get down there to get that question, because I look at the budget overall and when we get there I have a lot of questions about operations. So there's more a comment because I want to get down into the weeds too, but I'm not sure how appropriate it is or what the timing is.
Through the chair to the mayor and Councillor Derbyshire. So just to kind of summarize on operations, They are unionized staff, so they are bound by a collective bargain agreement. So if we were to start kind of pulling those services away, we would likely start receiving some grievances.
So I get that there's lots of little stuff that they could do, like tree pruning, but the main concern from the conversations that we've had is that we have enough operators to plow the roads, to cover all the roads, and that the road inspections get done. Those are the primary concerns. So we could, in my opinion, from the conversations that we had, implement those things and still have to go out for some tree trimming and other things.
Through the chair to Councillor Buckman, that is absolutely correct. So right now we're down the 2 staff that we're looking for. This provides no redundancy. Thankfully, we did have a mild winter this past winter, but I don't know if that will continue that route. And we did play I'll call it more or less a scramble to make sure that the roads were taken care of. Our operators are also bound by the legislation that they cannot plow for more than 13 hours in a day. So that's something to take into consideration when they start out early mornings, that they can't keep going all night, and then they can't keep going for more than, I believe it was 5 days straight of that type of snow plowing. We would, at that point, we'd have to look at bringing in additional resources.
Good.
So I guess this would take me back to, I'll just use my analogy in farming. If I don't have enough acres to own a combine, is it cheaper to hire the combining done? Or do I pay a large amount for a huge sum to sit in the shed for most of its life, right? So I tie up a huge chunk of time, money, and this, or asset sitting in a shed when I could just hire it out. If we put 2 more people on, they will be unionized, right? We will have to utilize them, we can't take it away. And are we now then bound to these positions for said period of time, or once somebody retires or moves out, can we back out a position?
Through the chair, Councillor Derbyshire, so I'll start with contracting out. So we did historically always contract out. I'll use Mount Bridge's sidewalks for an example. Then the contractor notified us with very, very short timeline that they can't even afford their liability insurance. So they actually quit the operation altogether and put their machine for sale. We do right now pay, I'll say, a hefty fee for just plowing the Melbourne sidewalks. And we will be looking to take that in-house as part of this as well. And back on, sorry, and what was the last part of your question?
Sorry, just about adding, if we add 2, are we bound to keep these 2 then for however long? Or, you know, if someone retires or quits or whatever, can we then eliminate that position, or are we stuck with, now you have 16 in this department, you have to fill it?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Derbyshire. Thank you for clarifying. So that it is very difficult to take staff away once you do have them on, so that would have to be brought to the negotiation table.
Sorry, I twigged there, so this might be a Director Payne, but if people retire, you don't have to backfill. There's not language in the contract that says once you're at a certain staffing level, you have to remain at that staffing level.
Through the chair to the mayor, you're correct. I think with their QP group, you would get that pushback, that they're used to a level of standard of manpower to get the task done. With that being said, if you took away certain elements of the job, whether it be tree trimming or what have you, I think we would have some resistance from the union, because you're taking away work. So can you? Yes, you can. We would face a lot of resistance from the union on that. But you don't have to, if somebody retires, do you have to? No, you don't have to replace them, but where does the work go? That's what they're gonna say, right?
Councillor Cook? did you?
Oh, yeah. I guess the question becomes is when is our next contract due for QP?
It expires December 31st, 2024.
And again, knowing that the primary concern is that we have empty plow roads, and that work in the past that was done by water and wastewater is now being done by the works department instead of, or the roads department instead of by works. You know, we know we have a significant deficit in culvert replacement and maintenance. That was identified in at least 2 studies that I can remember. You're confident that there's enough work to keep these people busy? Because, you know, you hate the standard jokes about, you know, 4 supervisors and 1 guy doing the work. Not saying that happens, but it's a standard joke. That, you know, we don't want to be in a position where that's what people see, is they see a lot of idle people. They need to be busy and they need to be working and keeping themselves busy to get those tasks done that we know are backed up on the books to get done.
And to answer your question, yes, I am very confident. I'll leave it at that.
Director Payne?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just add, there is specific language in our collective agreements on contracting out, so we'd have to work. It's not as if we could just contact a contractor to go cut that tree down. There's specific requirements as in our CBA that we have to meet and whatnot, so.
Councillor Pelt?
Yeah, I guess more as a general comment than something to each specific position is, you know, when I was looking at all the jobs, I'm trying to stay focused on the ones that are impacted by the growth of the municipality. We know we've added more streets. We know we've added more sidewalks. At some point, you got to bend and go, we don't have enough people to do that. And you know, we haven't, in the roads department, we haven't added people for quite a while. So, I mean, we've replaced people, but we haven't added people.
Correct. I've been here 5 years. I don't think we've added new positions for roads operators. We certainly have replaced, but not added.
Right.
In my mind.
So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to stay focused on is if we do add positions, I want to make sure those positions that we add are ones that are impacted by growth-related issues, because we know we have to maintain service. We don't want to be in a position where people are complaining, well, you used to be better at this, why can't you do it now? And the answer is because we've had growth and we didn't add people.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Chair, I appreciate that. I better turn my mic on, so thank you, Chair. I just want to reference, this is a comment first, but I just want to reference the report in front of us, FIN-2023-16. So that's the 3-page report prepared by Director Bacon, or interim CAO. 3-page report, and so along, you know, page 2 tells us kind of the wants and what we're looking at. And then there's the financial implications clause, which is there. So it says currently with this report that we're looking at, which is all of these issues that we've been speaking about, in operating alone, we're looking at a need for an extra $3.27 million, representing a 17.3% increase. I roughly took out the fire services, the $818,000 for the fire services, as Director Dakin had told us to. So I think now we're down to around a 12.9% increase required in operations to do all of this. So these are wonderful conversations, but do the conversations change amongst my fellow councillors when we realize we're looking to cut unless we're prepared to accept, and my math may be wrong, so we're prepared to accept a rather large percentage increase in operations, which will obviously reflect to a different mill rate, tax rate at the end of the day.
Certainly a conversation we're gonna have moving forward. Well, shortly, I think we'll start heading down that road. We'll finish up here. First, I saw Councillor Brennan had his hand up.
Oh, just two comments. I agree with Councillor Pelkman. If we did an inventory over the last 5 to 6 years about the number of kilometers of residential streets that we have added in Strathroy-Caradoc, I'm not sure if that would probably be like a completely new route for snowplow removal within, you know, the mandated period of time in which it's supposed to be done. But I think we all realize that if you want to get complaints, just do something that slows down the rate at which you're going to have your roads cleared after a major snowstorm, and your phone's going to be ringing off the hook. So I think we have to certainly understand that in areas where there's going to be service cuts or service delays, if we don't hire because we're not willing to absorb the cost of growth, we're going to get an awful lot of static on that. And there is a cost to growth, as we all know, and the challenge to growth is to try and balance them. So to go to the Deputy Mayor's comment, you know, the current increase that we'd be looking at out of the gate here in terms of you know, 11.9 or 12.3, whatever it is, once we deduct the fire, you know, we're going to have to take a look at that. We're going to have to take a look where we currently are in capital. We're going to have to take a look at the impact of the county rate and, you know, put it all in one magic little ball and say this is the magic figure. Like anything, we'll then have to, you know, cut and snip and balance. And it may very well be that there's room for reductions in the capital budget, which might result in a lower rate overall. But then also, and I say this with great trepidation, but you know, it's been 10 years. You know, 10 years ago we had a $12 million debt, and you know, this year we're gonna have less than $2 million in debt. And there's a reason why you lower your debt. It saves you money each year on interest, but it also gives you more borrowing room when you need to. And I think we do have that lever which we can use maybe. We have not used it in a while, and maybe the time to use it judiciously is in a year when the cost of growth finally really starts to hit in terms of the reality of what the levels of service are and what the demands are. I mean, in the building and planning, I mean, essentially we've got a download from the provincial government in terms of staffing, you know, just in terms of what the Conservation Authority doesn't do for us anymore and things like that. So we're going to have to spend more money on wages. We're going to have to do that. Or we're going to suffer dire consequences in service cuts or penalties if we don't get some building things done in time, or we're going to not meet provincial standards and we're going to be exposed in terms of our insurance and our liabilities. So this is just the cost of doing business. So it will probably be that the operating budget is going to have a larger than usual increase because of staffing requirements, and we're going to have to probably take a good look at our capital budget, and we're going to have to consider borrowing. And so that's probably where we're going globally as we exit this conversation and slide gracefully into a consolidated capital and operating budget, with the idea that in the background we have this 8.4% county increase that we're going to have to roll into what we're doing. So what's the bottom line? There's going to be a tax increase this year, and it's going to be the biggest one we've had in a while, I think. And it's in the first year of the mandate of this council, and it's going to cause us a lot of soul searching, and there's going to be some pain. Hate to say it that way, but I think that's what we're looking at.
Just to comment on that, so where we're kind of at, and Bill will summarize things shortly. It's about 50-50 in terms of 50% of our is operating and 50% is capital budget that we're looking at. So we're looking at about a 12% increase now on the operating budget, and I believe it's many more than 12% at the original swath of capital projects we looked at. So So, there will be a number of things that can be done on capital. There can be projects that are postponed or can't. That's, or in some cases, that's just kicking the can down the road because they're gonna have to be dealt with eventually. There are other options of taking money out of reserves, but again, those reserves are earmarked for projects in the future as well. So if you use them now, they won't be available next year or the year after that. And the other is, as Councillor Brennan mentioned, is borrowing to complete some of the projects as well. So you're not going to borrow to pay operating costs. You're going to borrow to do capital projects. So that's where we sit, if I'm correct in what I'm saying at this point. So I'll take a few more. I saw Councillor Puckman had his hand up first.
So I want to circle back to Deputy Mayor McGuire's comment about the $3.2 million increase in operating and calculated, sorry Mike, what did you say, about 12%?
12.9?
I think it's gonna come around 12.9, but don't rely on my
Yeah,
math.
the original number includes the 3.2 includes the 800,000 for fire, and that's been taken out plus the other thing, so it's down to about 2.1 or something like 2.1, 2.2, something like that.
So as we're looking at, that's an increase in spending only, so it does not include increase in revenue that we're gonna experience for growth. So do we know what percentage, if everything stayed the same, do we know what percentage our income would have gone up just because of growth?
Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, so you're saying what is our percentage what's our increase in assessment? Is that what you're asking, or?
So the 17.3%, which Mike is saying is 12.9 after.
12.6 actually.
Okay, 12.6. Is just pure percentage of growth and operating without taking into any consideration about what revenue streams or anything else. So we also know that 2 years ago, there was 215 new homes added in, and they should be coming on stream this calendar year. So I'm curious, if we didn't raise taxes at all, what's the percentage of added taxes that we would not have received from those homes and industrial buildings and commercial buildings that were built adding into the assessment?
I would be remiss to try and answer that, to be honest, because it's a matter of trying to figure out what the growth is and then what we would have. So that would involve some calculations based on MPAC's numbers. But we're basically looking at a 2% growth rate from MPAC. So our assessment went up by 2%. So and that is included. So 2 years ago, we started including the growth as part of keeping sort of the tax rate artificially low. So this, again, does that same process. So we're including all the growth to keep our tax rate low.
So the reason why
I'm misunderstanding your question, sorry.
The reason why I'm asking is because, if we're seeing an increase in 12.6% in operating costs, and we have a 10% growth in revenue, or can cover 10% of that increase in cost by new taxes that weren't there before, then, that becomes not so daunting a figure, because the difference is only 2.6, not 12.6.
Yeah. Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, so basically it's 2% is what we're talking. So at the 12.6, 2% of that would be covered by our growth, and the rest would be new taxation.
Okay.
So, and those numbers that are provided in that financial impact actually use our current assessment to come up with that tax rate increase.
Mayor, you hit your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just looking, and I apologize, I don't mean to center out engineering and public works, but just a conversation about adding full-time. If you look from 2020, we in fact have added 6 people in engineering. And overall, my concern is the growth in full-time staff. So you can look at 2020 and you look at what's proposed for 2023, removing the firefighters. Looks to me, to my math, that we'll have been up, 20 full-time equivalents in 3 years. And to piggyback on the point that Councillor Derbyshire was making, once you have them, you got them. We can cut it in many areas. We can cut, talk about trees, we can cut the number of new chainsaws that we let Director Strauss have every year. But once you have staff, you have them. And my concern is that number just keeps on growing. And I understand about growth, but again, looking at engineering and public works, we have in fact added 2 every year. So every year there will be rationale as to why we need those people, but I'm just concerned that that number is going to keep growing exponentially, and at some point in time we're going to have to address it.
Doug?
Through the chair to the mayor. So I just have a spreadsheet. What I'll do is, so engineering, you're correct, engineering and public works has gone up 6.5, 2020 through to 2022. So they're not all roads operators. I'll break down. So in 21, we added 2. One was an environmental services operator for wastewater. We added a drainage superintendent at that time. And that was driven by our previous CBO who held the title of drainage. So we added 2 for 2021. And 2022, we added an environmental services coordinator. That's in the water wastewater department to look after some of the reporting and the water collection, or the billing collection, sorry. And we added a flex operator in 2022. That is from our bargaining and through our CBA. We added 2 flex operators in 2022, which is divided, 1 in environmental public works, 1 in community services. And then in 2022, we did add another half flex operator there and 2 public works operators. So that's the 2 for roads.
Director Strauss?
Thank you, Chair. Just to the council, just to clarify though, the flex operators were historically seasonal operators for winter time. So they're in community services for 8 months of the season, and then they're with public works for 4.
Councilor Brennan?
Well, in the spirit of multi-year budgeting, which we've done in the past, we used to do things like, we'd split the cost of a fire truck between 2 fiscal years or something like that. So, with engineering and public works, if, you've got 2 operators, 2.5 there for 1 year, council can slow down the rate at which that happens. Maybe you do 1 this year and you do 1 next year and just split it between 2 years. That's always a possibility, and it lowers the tax income on any 1 year. So that's something that we might consider when we get down to looking at brass tacks and those final numbers. But 1 this year and 1 next year, and suddenly there's another $90,000 off the table for this year.
Councilor Wilsey, sorry I missed you earlier.
I'm just looking at numbers all the way around, and if I look at this number, even with reduced firefighters, by the time we add that together with the operation budget is that we're looking at for 2023 is somewhere around 95% of our 2022 total tax. So that leaves almost nothing for capital from our last year. So whatever thing that we're going to be putting on is going to be all capital. Anytime I've looked at a healthy business or a healthy operation, that operating budget before profit and expenses and everything else is normally somewhere around 50-60%, and we're running around 95. I can't see how that's sustainable. And also looking back through all of the capital budgets we've had since 2011, I looked through those earlier this week. Up until 2020, we didn't have a capital spend more than $2 million a year. And then now we're doing a 500% increase on a 3.6 million. So if you take that over the 10-year, we're actually doing a 15 times increase or a 10 times increase over our average spend that we've done over the last 10 years. So I think not spending money on capital has caught up to us, but I think what we've done is we've not spent on capital and we've overspent on operating, and I think we need to get that balance back. I'm not sure how we do that. Like, by my math, to do that, we need a huge tax increase. And without that, we don't have any money to build anything, fire halls, no major capital projects, because we're only looking at like a $3 million a year capital budget at most, and that's all gonna be tax increases, which is a $3 million is gonna be like 15%, and that's a lot.
I will let Bill take a look at that.
Thank you, Chair. So to Councillor Wilsey, so part of the difference in capital budgeting is also, most of them are major projects. So we don't replace a road every year. And they're about every 25 years, I think is, so we are dealing with the ebb and flow of capital projects. It's not like a normal business where capital is.
Why don't we let Director Dakin finish his answer, please?
So the capital would be major projects. So when you think about it, we're really, to be honest, in the engineering department of the construction business. We're running major construction projects. And so those, if you were to go to Omega, who's one of our contractors, take a look at the kind of work that they do every year, you're millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're doing it every year. We do those every 10, 15, 20 years, depending on where things are at. So I think to sort of be fair, you can't kind of look and say, well, this year we did 3 million. And you are right, we have kicked the can down the road, and this is part of the catch up. To be honest, the easiest way to reduce taxation is to reduce service levels. It's that simple. People can't expect the same amount of service, so therefore, if we want to cut taxation, we need to cut service levels, and that's what it really boils down to be honest.
And I haven't said anything about cutting taxes. I'm saying what we're proposing is a huge tax increase, and it's said there in your report. But to refute your point there about you don't do capital every week, I have many clients of mine who have capital budgets that are much longer than ours, and they do multi-million-dollar projects every year, so they don't get stuck where we are, where we have to do a 500% increase in capital from one year to the next. They plan that out and they do a 3 million, and that's why their operations is only 50 to 60% of their income, not 90 or 95. So we need to get that balance back. I don't know how we do that. We can't raise our tax by 50%, we'd get killed. There's just no way that's gonna happen. But we have to look at what we're spending on, and we have to get that balance back, so we can have like 40 to 50% of our income as taxes to fund these capital projects, so we can do the roads that we've been kicking down the road for 10 years, and we can do things like an arena, and we can do things like a fire hall, and we can finance them all, and I think that would be what we should strive for as good governance.
Councilor Pelkman.
I guess I just want to caution, we're not a business. We're in the business of providing service for people. And when they ask for service, we need to demand it. And that service is also dictated to us by the province. So if we're mandated to do things by the province, we don't have the option to not do it. There are things that we do that we don't have to do. And they are things such as community building efforts and stuff like that. And I guess I just caution to say at this point that we're looking at the tax increase that we want to have, and it's going to be a matter of slicing the wish list down to the tax increase that we want to have, and whether or not you agree to the levels of service, like just in listening to the positions that we added for engineering. One of those was something we contracted out for before, which was the collecting the water and the wastewater, or making the doing the billing, right? So that wage was essentially self-funded, and while yes, we added a position, we didn't add any tax increase for that. In fact, we saved some, if my memory is correct. So while yes, there's a graph there that shows we added people, there's also, it's not all just pure cost. There was better service or different service that was cheaper, and some of that came with complaints, and that's what happens when you go with cheaper service sometimes. So, yes, we're looking at a big tax increase, but I just want to caution, we're not a business and you shouldn't think like a business because we're not profit driven. We don't have the ability to control some of those costs that a private business can.
It should mention, again, keep in mind, capital projects, I mean, a lot of those are being financed through development charges and water and wastewater rates and other funding as well, so.
I'll just add that, you know, over the course of my time since 1998, you know, I can remember in 1998 and 1999, there was a significant amount of money spent on a new sewage treatment plant, a new police station, an arena. The senior center was rebuilt in that time frame, and those were things we needed. And you know, now we're at the point now where that project 22 years ago now needs extra work on it, right? So you're going to see on those really expensive projects, because I think the Strathroy sewage plant was the most expensive project that I remember ever approving, which at the time I think was 12 million, and that was in 1998. So you know, now we're seeing some of those costs come again over their life cycle, and we'll probably spend more money than what we're used to spending, but use debt to start to even that out. And then, you know, I liken it always, I know you guys, some of them have heard this before, but it's like an elastic, right? An elastic can hold so much stuff, and right now our elastics are stretched. And so you replace it with a bigger elastic that has room to grow. And that growth is gonna come without adding some of these costs that we're seeing at this point in time.
We also need to keep in mind that, as Councillor Brennan has mentioned many times, our debt is pretty much down to almost nothing. And we're coming up to large capital projects, and certainly debt financing is absolutely an alternative. It's the only alternative because people don't have $10 or $20 million lying around in cash to do long-term projects like that. So we have to look at a combination of things in order to achieve the goals that we have going forward. So, Councillor Derbyshire.
I guess my question would be, what then? Because the new council's sitting here, we're trying to figure it out. I see it both ways. We're a service group and we are a business. Whether we want to look at it, you know, whether we just want to be a service group or not, we're doing both things all at once. So, from my standpoint, I sit here and I think we need to do some cutting, probably not some adding. You know, let's get ourselves straightened around so that we can weather the storm. That's how I would do it in my business, so that's how I feel like I need to think. You guys, as the old council, have weathered storms and done this. Help us understand where we're going. Don't just tell us we paid down debt, we did this. Because to me, I would eat some debt along the way. Like, I would have still kept building and paying some of these capital projects off. I wouldn't have sat and held. We do have reserve funds, but they've caught up to us now where, yeah, we got 9 million in wastewater, but one project is gonna absolutely demo that. Whereas had we started in 2014, that project is a $4 million project, right? We've kind of, inflation and whatever has caught up to some of what we thought we were saving for, if you know what I mean.
So is the intention tonight for us to start making decisions to cut, or are we, because we have to at some point start making decisions, right? So as much as it would be a nice thing to do, out of the positions that are proposed, I guess I would ask Human Resources if that's that position. The task list that you identified are more wants than needs. Is that?
Yeah, it's a want for sure, but it is a need, because I'm behind on certain policies. There's policies that I need to get to and I can't get to. I just don't have the manpower to get to it. So I think with the future outlook of labor, and I'll give you an example of fire. When fire comes on, if if council approves that, there'll be a labor component to that, and that's gonna add to my busyness with respect to labor. There's more collective agreements. That's just the labor side, but, and I spoke in the report on health and safety, but it's all policies and procedures, so there's some out there I need to get updated, and we have some policies not even in place where I need to get them in place, so.
Some of those sound like maybe they're project driven, like, is it possible that some of that could be done by outside work?
That is a possibility. When I had a position, I look for the long haul. I don't look for, to council's, some of the questions. I don't want to add a position to lay the position off tomorrow, right? So, when I look at the growth in our municipality, and I talk labor, our staff, and some of the programs I need to bring that I don't have, it's for the long haul, not the short term. But I could, to your point, to get me caught up, I could get a consultant, which that'll run, that'll be, yeah.
I know that'll be a cost as well.
Okay, so I think we're kind of at a position where, we've seen the proposed operating, we've seen the proposed capital, and I think we need to say, how big a tax increase do we want? Do we want a 5% tax increase? Do we want a 7% tax increase? Do we want a 10% increase or more than that? And if we say we want a 5% tax increase, then we send staff back to come up with a 5%, what fits into 5%? But keep that in mind, if we're only going 5%, we're kicking things down the road and we're gonna have to pay for it in the future. So to me, that's kind of where we're at. So I don't know, Bill, if you want to comment on that, or others want to comment on that, but yeah, the mayor, you're the boss.
No, I agree, because you're going exactly where I was gonna go, Chair, because I look at this, and what I would do now, again, I know we're business, whatever, I would be kicking it back to staff and saying, you need to come back to us with a cut. So to use, again, sorry, Director Strauss, but if you need those two positions, I would ask, come back and find the savings somewhere in your operating budget. And I just happen to have the arena budget up here, and I look at it. Again, I don't know anything about janitorial supplies, but the thing I would do in business, can you save a couple $1,000s? So my normal way is do just as you were suggesting, send it back. If you need those positions, find the savings for us. If you really need them, find the savings, go through your budget, find savings that we can use, and if it's 5% or 4%, I think now is to throw it back to staff, and I apologize for that, but go through your budgets line by line, find savings for us, because we can't sit here and do that.
Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Reddick.
Thank you. Over to Intro CAO, use the highest title they have. I just have two definitions that I'm just looking to find out what they are. Again, I'm referring to the sheet that you prepared, the FIN 2023-16. So on that, page 2, it talks about municipal debt, $65,714, and then in the comments, several loans have been paid off. It includes the addition of the fire apparatus received in 2022. So that is a cost on this, let's call it a spreadsheet. So what is included in the $65,714? And similarly, under taxation and grants, this is always a line item that I'm confused about. Almost $700,000. And of course, there's notations off to the side. Can you tell me what that $700,000 cost is?
Through the chair to the deputy mayor. So looking at municipal debt, so that would continue to decrease obviously as we pay off our debt. We've added, in 2022, we purchased a fire truck that was not added because of the timing to our debt. By the time we took delivery, Infrastructure Ontario shut down, adding debt for 2022. So that will be added in 2023. So that increased cost is about $6,500 annually on the loan for that fire truck. That's what that 6,500 is.
65,000.
65,000, sorry, yes.
So that's interest on that.
Interest and principal.
Interest and principal increase, so an interest and principal increase over what we paid last year in debt payments.
So what we do is, on the municipal debt sheet, we include both the interest and the principal amount. Unlike a business, where a business would just record the interest portion, as a municipality, we have to show interest and principal, and then there's an adjusting entry done at year end. And this is where it gets very confusing, because this is where municipalities operate, and then when the auditors walk in the door, the auditors get involved, and there's an accounting piece. And so then what we have to do is pull out of all of our principal payments and put those against to reduce the loan. So you see, now you just see, in essence, in fact, we had a discussion at the beginning of the meeting with the mayor and Councilor Wilsey. It looks like there's a surplus sitting in municipal debt. What that is the reduction of taking the principal portion out and now applying that to the loan to reduce the loan so that all of our outstanding loans go down. Excuse me, so that $65,000 includes both interest and principal. At the end of the year, when the accountants get involved and the auditors get involved, we have to pull that principal piece out. So overall, annual cost increase in all of our debt is $65,000. The taxation and grant is, I agree, it's quite the misnomer, because that's really the catch-all. So that's where we receive, for instance, OMER's, not the OMER's, the OOF grant. So when I started in 2012, we were over $600,000 that we were receiving from the province. We're down to just over $100,000. So over 10 years, we've decreased by almost almost $500,000, $500,000. The province just continues to roll that back 15% a year. So as that amount drops off, we have to increase taxation, obviously, because our expenses don't drop off at 15%. So I'm just gonna pull out the taxation grant so I can give you the exact numbers. In there would be any payments that we make to, like, the conservation authorities. So again, conservation authorities payments have increased, so there's an increase in that one. We increase each year annually the BIA, so what we pay the BIA and collect in BIA, that goes up as well.
Can I ask you what page you're on, just for quick reference?
I'm trying to get there.
Oh, okay.
So once I get there, I'll give you the page number. As I'm sort of talking off the top of my head while I'm looking for the page, which is dangerous. Page 13. So you'll see on page 13, it includes what we currently, it includes all the sort of catch-all items. So under expenses, we have our post-retirement benefit, which is not, that's an adjustment that's done at the end of the year based on actuarial work. The two biggest pieces there are obviously the operations, so transfer to operations and transfer to capital. So that's where we would increase. So part of the increase that you're seeing of the 600,000 is this increase, the tax increase that you're seeing. We haven't increased, so in there is also transfer the asset management reserve. So we've been adding 230,000 every year to that. There's also a reserve transfer for our future needs. And that is, we could use that, for instance, so typically a lot of other municipalities use that as a rate stabilization. But again, what you're doing is then taking money out of reserves for operation, which in my mind is not a smart move. But again, those are things that we can do. So conservation authorities make up that. Obviously, tax write-off. So people that appeal their property taxes, it's included in there. And so 22 was thought to be a year in which we were going to have our assessment. So then we would have to have a lot of appeals, obviously. So we upped that number this past year for that. Everything else looks like it stays fairly level. So tax increase, the write-off, because at one point this was going to be an assessment year, and typically in an assessment year we see a lot of appeals for property taxes, in which case we have to pass money back. I think the last other increase was conservation authorities. So conservation authorities have gone up, and again, that's part of the province funding, so that the province is changing the mandate for them and removing a lot of funding. So unfortunately, we're partners with them, and what that gets passed along to us. So those are the, under those two categories, that's sort of the lion's share of those increases.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the St. Clair was 11 or 12% increase
12%, yeah.
Year over year as well. So that's a levy that's passed through that we don't have the appealable rights on. So Councillor Brennan.
Just getting into next steps, then the document in front of us, the 2023 full-time position request. I see that the fire services, the 8 positions, approximately $800,000 was pulled off the table for now. That leaves us with 800. You know, if we were making a direction to staff for the next meeting, there's $800,000 there left on the table. If we were to ask them to prioritize those positions and then spread them over 2 years, $400K in year 1, $400K in year 2, that might be an approach that we could ask staff to come back with us, and then to try to also overall come back with an operating budget increase that's in the range of 5 to 6%, which we could then use as a starting point for the next step when we try to rationalize it with capital. And I don't know if you're looking for a motion at this point to direct staff, or if we just you know what we're doing here at this point in terms of wrapping things up for today, but are you looking for a motion in terms of setting a number that we're going to ask staff to come back with at the next meeting?
It probably doesn't hurt.
Okay, so I make the motion that we direct staff to trim this year's operating budget down to a 6% increase for our next meeting, and we can then at that point proceed with looking at maybe making future adjustments to that.
Is there a seconder to that? Deputy Mayor, any comments or questions? Councillor Wilson, the Mayor.
Once we get this budget back and it's at 6%, if we look at things with capital and we decide we want it even lower, are we able to do that, or is this our last kick it to come
Oh
back?
no, we got many more kicks, and there's also alternatives available on that capital budget as well, like borrowing, going into other funds to get the money that we need and that kind of stuff as well. So certainly there's lots of other opportunities there. The Mayor, you were next, sorry.
No, my question was answered. I was gonna ask the same as Councillor Wilsey.
We're not committing to anything here.
No.
We're just saying
Process.
we'd like to see it at 6%, come back at a 6% number, all right? That's what we're asking.
I guess then I'd ask for clarification to these dollar figures that are given for the new positions are for the entire year, but we're obviously not gonna get anybody hired until halfway through the year. So can we see those reflected as being half-year impacts as opposed to full year? At least in the budget proposal for what the tax requirement would be.
I see what you're saying, but we have to look at them as, they're gonna be around next year, so it's still gonna be a full year, right, so. Okay, any other questions? Oh.
Councillor Pelkman's request is, again, part of the process which we might go to at a future meeting when we take a look at the final impact for this tax year. And that's to go back to the Mayor and Councillor Wilsey. There's still a lot more trimming to go on this garment, and as we get further along, we may very well take a look at the half-year cost, and that could be incorporated into the tax rate for this year, keeping in mind that we know that the full impact would come the following year.
this is a long process, and I realize that, but really, we're looking at it as education year, and for new counselors, I appreciate what Councillor Derbyshire was saying, you know, looking to people from the past, you know, what's the experience and stuff like that. So again, we're not committing to anything, we're just saying, you know, now we put a stake in the ground, we said 6%, so what's that look like? So next week when we come back, we'll have a better idea of what that looks like. Does that make sense? Or, is it next week?
Through the chair, to the chair, next week is capital.
Capital.
So, this will be coming back at a future meeting, we'll have to set a date.
Okay.
Because right now, all we have scheduled is next week's. And then, and again, so just so everyone has a comfort level, we continue these meetings until everyone's happy. It's not like tonight we're done, we keep going until council as a whole, maybe that's the best bet. Council as a whole is happy.
I think that though, we are looking at capital next week, but I think then we should also go with it, go with the mind of being prudent on capital moving into this year as well. So if we're, you know, if we're being prudent on the one side, we need to be prudent on the other side as well, if that makes sense.
Historically, when we have the final vote on the budget, it's almost always done, I think, with consensus. I think rarely have we had votes against the final budget. Councillor Pelkman, would you agree with that? It's only happened once or twice over the years. But the aim is to make everybody happy. Sometimes we don't, and sometimes we just have to vote.
I think we've always had one holdout.
I think we've always had maybe one.
Well, I mean, obviously, if somebody votes against it in finance, you know, it still moves forward. I expect they would vote against it at the council meeting as well. Councillor Wilson.
In the, just when we're looking at capital, and I realize we're gonna be looking at it again next meeting, could we ask staff to prioritize their capital, realizing that we're at a 500% increase? That's not gonna happen. Are we able to prioritize those numbers so that they can actually start working ahead of time, so that when we ask them to bring both back together, we're not waiting 2 or 3 weeks for them to do that, and maybe set a target in the historical amount, which is somewhere between 5 to 10% of total taxation, which is what we've done for the last 10 years?
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so in anticipation of that question and comment, I met with staff today. And so what we've done is gone through capital already and have pulled out projects. So what I'm gonna do, and this was what I was gonna discuss before we adjourned, is that you will see projects that staff have removed. The danger is those are projects that staff have removed, and you as council may not think that you want those removed. You might want to remove something else. So they will be in there, but they will not be included in the taxation total. So you'll see how much we've removed, but it won't constitute the total taxation. So if you decide to put that back in, we can put that money back in and remove something else. It's a bit of a sliding scale. Council in the past has kind of frowned on the idea that staff sort of remove all the capital projects and then come to you with them removed, and then you don't know what went out. So we're gonna show that, but we have already reduced that. I know, for instance, in recreation, in community services, we've cut it by almost $500,000 already. I'm working through public works, I forget what we ended up coming up with. As well as the other thing that we did is went back in and put in the ones that we've already pre-approved at what that rate's going to be. So we're not looking at a budgeted number for those ones. Well, it is a budgeted number, but it's already an approved amount. So the council's well aware of what they've already approved.
Councillor Pelkman and then Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just as a slight rebuttal to Councillor Wilsey, that I don't think we should be focused on the total amount spent, we should be focused on the taxation required. Just because some of those projects we've saved up for years and the money's in reserves. So it's not appropriate to look at total spend when you're looking at really expensive projects like wastewater that we have been saving up for. So I would like that we focus on the taxation required as opposed to the total dollar spent. But otherwise, the concept, I agree, is correct.
responding?
Just to be clear, maybe I misspoke, but I wanted to look at 5 to 10% of taxation is what we're being spent, is how I phrased it. So not total spend, but 5 to 10% of the taxation is what I had talked about. But anyways, I think we're on the same page, so.
Different?
You'll probably do it, Director, but I'm just wondering, when we receive it, can you color code? We've approved a number of capital projects already, so can you color code those so we know they're hands off, they're done? Kind of the discretionary stuff, non-discretionary stuff. Because I think the more information we get up front, at this point in time, I'm starting to get my head around this. It's not an easy process. Yeah, what's discretionary, what's not discretionary, what's high priority. All of that color coded. It might look like a rainbow, but that's good. We can work through that easier.
And some of those projects have been awarded. They're already a different price than what they were in the original budget. So we'll have what the contract price is in there now. I believe, right?
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
Director Loborn can go.
Thank you, Chair. I just, we've been talking about cutting out of the operating budget, but we're 5 months in now into our year. So we have a good handle on at least in recreation, on revenues. And we can do a better job at projecting what our revenues are gonna be versus what we budgeted back in December when staff pulled this together. So I've already gone through and just done recreation by itself and have lowered the 4% in community services already down to 2% increase. Now, that's just looking at recreation. I don't know, like, I guess I'm at a bit of a luxury because I have the abilities to generate revenue where other departments don't. But I would be remiss if we just focused on cutting without evaluating what our revenue generation is.
I think in the end, we want to get at that 6% tax increase. That's where we want to get. Councilor Derbyshire.
I don't know if we see that, just going to kind of how Steve said that we take money from here, there, and everywhere. Not everywhere, it's coming out properly. I don't want to make it sound like we're just pulling off the money tree, but multiple sources. There you go, thank you, John. Will we get to see kind of some of that so that we know where it is? Like, or will it just be a certain percentage out of taxation we'll be able to see? Like when we say, I'm just gonna pick a project, say Drury Lane, right? Obviously there's some wastewater, there's some water, and obviously there's some taxation, maybe some good roads, and then the money that was already put away by you guys the year before, like, we'll get to kind of, we see that breakdown, or?
Well, I think it's on that spreadsheet that's supplied, right?
Yeah, okay. It's got a total breakdown for everything going forward. Perfect.
But that'll be updated as well with the.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, kind of where and what it's coming out of. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because there's some reserve funds there that do have some decent numbers in them.
Yep.
Then there's some that are, we're starting to get down to the nitty gritty on them, and we have to kind of maybe pick and choose what project we want to do with that said money.
Grants.
Director Dayton. We still have a motion out there that we need to vote on.
Yes.
So.
Why don't we do that?
Okay, so the motion that Councilor Brennan made was that we would be aiming for a 6% increase in the operating budget and directed staff to come to a 6% increase in taxation. And that was seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? One opposition. I guess you wanted to charge more. Anything else for tonight?
So the other, thank you, Chair. So the other thing will be that, don't get too comfortable because then we're coming back with multi-year budgeting. But one of the things, if you recall our multi-year budget, the first step in that multi-year budget is that we come to council and get an idea of the percentage increase, which would alleviate a lot of this, because then we would come to council with a budget that is falls within the parameters of the increase that you would like to see. And then that gives us a better launching point. You need to understand that in the 2023 budget that we were proposed, it was full-blown. Here's where everything is. There was no direction from council as to what that increase needed to be. Very similar to tonight's motion where it says, come into operations with a 6% increase. With that in mind, management team can go back now and pare down to that 6% increase. So when the first step of our multi-year budget will be that we will be coming back to council and asking council for what does that increase look like for the next 4 years. And we'll get clarity as whether it's 4% each year, so an overall 16% increase over 4 years, or is it 4% over the 4 years, 1, 1, 1, 1. We'll make sure that that is clear before we go back. That was it.
And there'll be a strategic plan at the beginning of that as well,
Yes.
hopefully as well. 'Cause I mean, that's the overall guide as to where we want to go. I saw Councillor Wilsey and Councillor Brenner.
Just as a question, when this comes back, I know there's been a few things that I've asked of the different departments. I had one that I sent over to fire and some other questions I put to Director Dakin about their departments where costs were budgeted in 2022. They were exceeded by more than 50% and the totals for 2023 hadn't been updated. So on some of the departments, I'm saying those numbers are still the same. Will we be seeing reflected costs where they're actually more in line with what the actuals were? Because the numbers that I saw going up were fuel, were cell phones, were insurance. Those are not going to go down in 2023. So I want to make sure those are done. Plus there was issues on the fire department with 2 of the fire departments where they actually projected a 33% decrease in the hourly labor cost, but only in 2 of the departments. The other one had a 10% increase. So I'm not sure how that went because that was all part-time firefighters. But I put those questions out to the departments. Will we be getting those updated operations budgets with those numbers reflecting the more accurate costs with this as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so hence my call to the other day to sit down and try and sort this out. So I would like, if you're open to sit down and we can go over line by line those ones, because I think some of them are very, just talking about cell phone, for instance, we increased staffing, so there's an increased cost the year when we bought more cell phones. So that's why it's up. So obviously we're not going to increase staff or replace phones. In the roads department, for instance, there's nothing to replace a couple cell phones because they get run over or something. So those costs are included in the cell phone line and are a one-time cost. So that's why there's sometimes discrepancies where you'll see, say, $1,500 budgeted, $1,700 spent, and then we're budgeting again $15 because we're not anticipating replacing another phone again in the coming years. So those are some of the things that I can sit down with you and go over if you wish.
All right, we'll let you discuss that offline. Councillor Brenner.
Just to clarify to the public and the media, that last motion doesn't mean the increase will be 6%. It just means we're using that as a step in a process to get towards what the final number will be once council understands what the impacts of those types of percentages represent. But really what we're doing here is we're taking it from a 12.6 to a 6 just because, well, it's a step in the process and we're going to get to a number at some point. We don't know what that will be, and historically we've always tried to get to a number that's low enough that we don't have people screaming at us too loudly that they can't afford to pay the increase. At the same time, we also don't have people screaming at us that the service cuts are so ridiculous that they think, you know, that we're doing this. We're balancing the two. And we're going to come out at some equilibrium point where we vote and hopefully a majority of the council supports what the final result will be. But it's a process, and we've just taken a step towards that tonight. We did have a vote where one person voted, and again, I'll talk to the mayor later and find out why he voted against it, but I get concerned when the head of council votes against something like that and we don't know why, and I don't know what if there could have been a friendly amendment to the motion that would have had him vote in favor of it, but that's for him to discuss on his own time with people here or after the meeting.
All right, so mean, we have such a wide audience, it's probably gonna be reported on the national tonight already, so, I think not. Do we have any other motions that we need to, we're good? Any other comments, questions? Maybe you should book your Thursdays for the rest of the year. Thursday evenings. Anyway,
Is Thursdays carved in stone?
Yeah, I have, go ahead.
Next Thursday is, beyond that, we'll come up with something, but,
Next Thursday is just a little problematic. Dylan Giffen, we're having, the municipality is sponsoring his day at Caradoc Sands. I'm supposed to be there. Starts at 6. I don't know if that was your concern, Councillor Pelkman, but if we could do it earlier, next Thursday.
No, I just have a work-related issue on Thursday evenings.
could, like for next Thursday, could we meet at 4? Is that a possibility?
Sandy and I will be at that conference next Thursday.
So you won't be here next week at all?
And I believe Sandy is at the same conference on
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay.
If you leave it till 5, then we might be able to log
Okay.
on,
Okay.
but I don't know what earlier.
Sounds like it. Sunday afternoon overtime. Sorry, that's a dirty joke.
Wednesday the 26th.
How's next Wednesday for everybody? How's next Wednesday for everybody? 4 people away on the Thursday.
No, need to post the agenda,
Oh, it's gonna be 5 days in advance.
so we can't go earlier, unfortunately.
No.
So that would bring us to the first week of May. Council meeting is on the 1st.
You can't do it Friday morning, Friday afternoon.
If you're retired, you have flexibility. For those of you that have real jobs, I don't know how much flexibility you have.
Not an option for me.
How's next Friday? I don't like meeting on Fridays, but
So Friday would be the 28th at 4 or 5 or something like that. Is that possible?
gotta get it done. It's gonna be 2024 before we know it.
You won't be farming by then?
Wow, whatever.
You will be.
Maybe a few hours off.
So, would 4 work, just for staff,
4 o'clock on Friday works.
4 o'clock next Friday?
I won't be here.
Oh,
I'm actually, I've planned a vacation around these dates, and I leave on Friday, and I'm not back until the 7th.
so, yeah, yeah. You're in a bind either way, right? So either we keep it where it is, or we
Keep it where it is.
Thursday.
Friday at 4.
I'll figure out something. This is more important, so I'll figure out something.
So, now we're still at next Thursday?
Keep it on the
Yeah,
Thursday.
but we only need 5 days, right? For the agenda. It's coming out tomorrow, I would assume? Doesn't that give us 5 days? To Wednesday?
But they can't get the reports done by then?
Which reports?
So the changes that would be, that we asked for in the budget would need to be completed and put on the agenda as posted to the public?
But even for Thursday, doesn't it have to come out tomorrow?
But I think this is 5,
I'm working here tonight.
what can we do?
That's all I'm saying. If
I
it
mean,
comes out,
I'm retired, so it doesn't really matter. I can do Fridays, or Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but where are we headed?
We'll stick with the Thursday and then schedule accordingly after that. But
Okay, so we'll stick with Thursday, okay?
But we could also meet on the Friday. We could do a Thursday and a Friday to get this process moving. But, you know,
And just to be clear, it's capital next week, all right? Okay, we good? So a long discussion to keep the meeting where it was. All right. Who says we can't get anything done?
they're asking for a
Anyway, we need a motion to adjourn. The deputy mayor, Councilor Brennan, all in favor?
In favor.
Thank you.